It looks like we're about to see another flyby, a bit slower here, and we'll look for that hook to be extended out of the back of each airplane as they come by.
That would not be good form, Lester, for the pilot to forget to drop his hook on this pass.
Oh, okay, that's probably a high G turn there, isn't it?
Yes, that's the, looks like the brake turn. They'll be slowing down, dropping their landing gear and their flaps. They'll be descending to 600 feet above the water and slowing down to that approach speed.
So again, that wasn't actually a flyby, that was actually entering the pattern then.
Exactly, and you can see he's dropped his landing gear and his flaps, Lester. He's circling around, and he'll be calling the ball at about the 45 degrees off the ship's wake position.
Now, I know he's not going very fast. It's a pretty tight bank. At this point, pulling a few Gs, are you feeling a bit of a sensation of lightheadedness?
Not too much. They probably pulled about 4 Gs when they initially did the brake, but that slows gradually as the airplane decelerates.
This again is an S-3 Viking. We're told this plane that you're looking at right now is carrying White House Chief of Staff Andrew Card. The next plane you see will be carrying the President of the United States. But I'll keep my mouth shut here a moment. Let's watch as Andrew Card's plane makes its landing. Landing. You may have heard that sound. That's why they call it the nickname the Hoover of this airplane, as they adjust the throttles and those engines make the sound of a vacuum cleaner. Now, Admiral, in combat operations, when a lot of planes landing and taking off, I take it they've got to clear that spot very quickly.
They do. They like to land airplanes with 40-second interval in the daytime, Lester, and a minute between them at night. So it's a very precise and rather speedy operation.
Now, I'm not sure if Andrew Card is in the co-pilot seat. If he is, that's who you're looking at there through the tinted glass with the helmet. We know the President will be in that position. I'm not clear whether Card... Admiral, this plane has 2 other seats in the back for the systems operators?
It does. You can see the small window just to the left of the 702 side number. That's where one of the warfare systems operator sits, and then there's another one on the other side.
And here's the President's plane. This is Navy 1.
They should be calling the ball here in a minute, or a second.
And that's saying that they see the deck, they see the landing indicators.
Exactly. Nice start.
For those of us old enough to remember the old ticketing policy at Disneyland, that's what they call an e-ticket ride. The President of the United States safely down on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln as they fold the wings up and prepare to taxi into position. You said nice start, Admiral. You were grading that landing?
Absolutely, and I'd give it an OK. I can't see which wire it was, but an OK2 or an OK3 wire.
So OK is good. That's OK.
OK is about as good as you get, or you can get an OK underline. That's really extraordinary.
OK, watch carefully here. You'll get a glimpse of the President's helmet here. He is in the right seat, your left, as the plane approaches us now. Maybe we'll even get a thumbs up.
Probably be able to see his name on the side there, Lester, right below the canopy glass.
Everyone on board is wearing a different color. That's color-coded. The yellow are the folks, the directors who are directing the airplanes on the deck of the ship. In fact, it says George W. Bush there, right on the right. You see it in white, and below it, it says Commander-in-Chief. Sometimes it's really good to be the President. And they've stopped in a position. They were actually looking at the aircraft commander, and the President would be just on the other side there. What are these fellas doing right here, Admiral?
They're chaining the airplane, putting chocks under the wheels so it doesn't roll around on the deck as they prepare to shut it down.
And there's the President.
I'm sure that after they landed, the President, the aviator in him, was wishing that they would taxi him up to the catapult and get another shot.
That's the best part. And we're about to see the President, hopefully in a short time, be emerging. Now, I know there's some business to do with the ejection seat before you start moving around too much.
Exactly. You want to make sure that the ejection handle is in a safe position. before you start unstrapping.
You actually put a pin in it to disable it?
Exactly.
And there are some of the crew members now. This is forming a welcoming line for the president as he's about to emerge from this airplane. These planes, we should note, there weren't enough of them during the war. They've been primarily used as mid-air refuelers. They can't carry as much as the big Air Force tankers, and a lot of airplanes traveling a lot of distances in Iraq. And on this particular airplane, they had to start using some of the brand new FA-18E Super Hornets and using them in the tanker role. To keep the airplanes flying. There was so much demand for fuel during the high tempo of the war operations. But it is a plane now and on the deck, a carrier very close to the continental United States. And Admiral, we see in the distance that helicopter hovering. That would be standard procedure to have one nearby, wouldn't it?
It is. You have usually, Lester, one in the daytime and two at night. They're called plane guard helicopters, and they're ready with combat swimmer air crewmen on board, ready to swoop in and rescue anybody that happens to go into water from an airplane, or if they inadvertently got blown overboard by jet blast, one of the deck crewmen, they're there to help with that as well.
George Lewis is just below the deck on the Abraham Lincoln. What was the reaction when the president's plane touched down, George?
Well, it's interesting. We had a couple of Navy guys come over and watch. I've got one of them here. Let me get him over. Tell me your name and what you do.
I'm David Eddy. I'm a yeoman for VAW 113, world famous Black Eagles.
What do you think of the president landing on this carrier, doing an arrested landing?
It's pretty exciting news. You know, everybody's looking forward to his visit. Looking forward to him speaking with us and speaking to the nation on board this great carrier.
You hope to meet him personally?
Probably won't be able to do that.
George, let me interrupt for a moment.
Okay,
We're seeing the president. Seeing the
Thank you,
president now greeting crew members. That's quite a sight. A president in a flight suit and helmet. Now, Admiral, I don't know how to put this delicately. I've been in that situation you have. You're going to walk a little funny because of the stuff you have strapped on you around your legs, I guess is a general way to put it.
Well, it not only that, but it weighs a lot. It's not built for comfort. It's built for safety, Lester. And you've got to just take your hat off to the folks that were flying those long combat missions. We had some that were flying in Afghanistan more than 10 hours strapped into that hard ejection seat.
President being welcomed now by the officers aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln.
That looks like Admiral John Kelly. He's the battle group commander. He's led this fine crew and the battle group all the way up through workups prior to their July departure, and of course through combat operations in Afghanistan and Iraq.
And no doubt very proud of the accomplishments. George mentioned this ship's been at sea an awful long time. To bring everyone back home is quite an accomplishment.
It really is. It's an extraordinary record, and it just speaks volumes for the professionalism and the hard work of every single sailor on that aircraft carrier and in that air wing.
Let me bring NBC's Bob Kerr at the White House into this. Bob, it's quite a picture, a symbolism of the commander-in-chief decked out in flight gear.
Lester, it's not only quite a picture, it's actually an historic picture. As we've been saying, the White House believes you've never seen a president land on an aircraft carrier at sea in quite this way. And tonight, history will be made again when the reason the president's there, the first live televised address to the nation from a carrier at sea, moving aircraft carrier. So the White House is delighted, obviously, at this imagery, Lester. But he is not going to be the first president who has ever spent the night on an aircraft carrier. That little place in history went to President Bill Clinton, who did that a few years back. President must be hearkening back, though, Lester, to his days, not necessarily as a combat pilot, but in the Texas National Guard, the Texas Air National Guard, where this picture was taken in the late 1960s as the president learned how to and then did pilot the F-102 Interceptor back then. Never quite got to follow in his father's footsteps by landing on a carrier during battles at sea. His father, President Bush, did do that during World War II many, many times. But this is the type of picture that the White House wants seen here in the United States as the president begins a two-pronged effort, really, at pushing himself as someone who is trying to protect the national security of the country in doing what he did in Iraq. And also, you take it 24 hours from now, Lester, this is a president who's going to be somewhere else in California, pushing, fighting again for what he believes is the way to stimulate the economy. It's a 1-2 punch that this administration, this White House, wants to carry right through the campaign of 2004.
And I remarked a moment ago, sometimes it's good to be the president. It's pretty cool to fly on board an aircraft carrier. At the same time, we're reminded that the same young men the president is posing with are the same young men he sent into harm's way, and that's the toughest part of being the president of the United States. These folks were at sea a very, very long time in some dangerous waters, and they're back safely, and they're being thanked, and their efforts being appreciated by their commander-in-chief as he continues to make his way now from the deck crew members to, looks like, some fellow aviators here who are also decked out in their float coats, their life preservers and flight suits. And notice most of them are in beige flight suits. That, of course, was a camouflage color of choice for operations in the Gulf. And these were folks who thought they were on their way home at one point. The ship had pulled up anchor. I believe it stopped in New Zealand or Australia, if my memory serves me correctly, and was told to stand fast, hang on a minute, and see what happens. And then as war became close, they learned they weren't going home. They were sent back to the Persian Gulf, where their planes were operating around the clock in concert with a number of other aircraft carriers, some of which are also making their way home today. Home port is actually Washington State. The next stop, however, will be San Diego. Many of these flight crews are from squadrons based at various parts across the country. And in fact, I believe there might be one squadron here that's based all the way out in Virginia. And some have already made the fly-off home. Others will be in short order, but they stuck around to greet the President of the United States, who continues to make the rounds here. These gentlemen and perhaps ladies he's talking to right now wearing the red, they're the ordnance crew members. These are the folks that actually load the bombs and the missiles on the airplanes. They're also responsible for responding to a crash situation. They call them the Skittles, all the different colors on the deck, so everyone's job is quite clear. The president clearly basking in the moment. Admiral McGinn, it's a tough job being away from home for 6 months, 10 months. Have you ever done a deployment that long?
My longest one was during the Vietnam War. I made a couple of them that were about 9 months long, and it's really tough. It's tough on the families in particular. They worry about their loved ones being out there on the pointy end of the spear, and miss a lot of holidays, a lot of special events. A lot of the sailors tomorrow in San Diego who will be going off first are the new dads and the new the folks who have never even seen their babies who were born during the past 9.5 months.
And when I've been on these ships, I always find it remarkable.
Iraq is a lot better off with the removal of Saddam Hussein from power.
Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona. I'm told you do have to go. Senator, I greatly appreciate your being with us.
Let me just mention one other
Please do.
thing, if I could. The President flying out there today, I think, is a wonderful thing for the men and women in the military. That carrier has been at sea for more than 10 months, which makes be the longest since World War II. And I can't tell you how good they feel about their commander-in-chief coming out to see him, and I'm sure glad he's doing it.
Absolutely. Senator, thank you very much. It's much like the CEO coming aboard to say nice work to the workers, which happens around here now and then, and I know how great it must be to have the president land on the deck of your carrier. And I know down below on the deck where John Scott is, they're watching with great interest. John, what's the mood down there?
They are pretty ecstatic down here. I see a lot of smiles on a lot of faces, and I've got probably 100 people behind me watching our coverage, Shepard. Just wanted to say, Laura Bush and whoever does the White House laundry is going to be pretty happy the president is still wearing that flight suit, because you notice the first honor guard that he passed, they were nice and clean. Everybody else out there, like, look at that blue shirt on the left. That stuff that looks gray, that's kind of this amalgam of tar, oil, aircraft fuel. It is a dirty job to work up on that deck. And the president's going to have some stains on that flight suit just from rubbing elbows with these folks, let me assure you.
I'm sure he will. It's very loud up there, but every now and then we're able to hear what they're talking about as he greets the Skittles, so to speak. Let's see if we can hear anything. John, I don't know about you. This strikes me more than anything as one brilliant set of politicking.
I think you got to say so, Shepard. And I'll tell you what, this president is universally beloved by just everybody that I've talked to on this ship. They are proud of the work they have done. They are proud of the fact that he trusted them enough to send them off to do this job. And, you know, some of those young fellas that I was talking to, we had them on Fox News earlier in the day. They're 19, 20 years old, and frankly, the average age of those people working on the flight deck up there, not much older than that. Some of these kids, you know, may have dropped out of high school, may have, for whatever reason, not believed in themselves, but working on this carrier and going through this extended 10-month deployment has really built a lot of confidence in these people. They know they can do the job now, and they're grateful to this president for having given them the opportunity.
That is clear, and he is ear to ear. Listen in.
Good job. Good job, and you did it.
Shepard?
Yeah, John?
Good job.
I'm sure you've observed, as I have, how much more relaxed this president seems now that Operation Iraqi Freedom seems to have gone pretty well. Yes, we took more than 100 casualties, and that's always going to be on his mind, I'm sure. But think of the predictions before the war began. Just note, he's there with the fire crews there, the silver shirts. They're the ones who would fight a fire that broke out. Anyway, before this war broke out, the tension, the weight of the world seemed to be on his shoulders. A lot of that seems to have melted away these days, and it's good to see.
It sure does, and I think this is going to mark an at least psychological turning point. I just happened to see the president the other night at the White House Correspondents Association's dinner in Washington, and that's normally a time where the president yucks it up, tells some jokes, makes a little fun of us, and especially of the White House correspondents themselves, the Jim Angles of the world. And it was a night, the first time that I've been to one of those occasions, where the president wasn't yucking it up. There were no jokes. He paid tribute to a couple of our colleagues who lost their lives for one reason or another during this war, and has been a pretty serious guy for obvious reasons over the past couple of months. Maybe this is a turning point where the president will get back to his casual self, and certainly he seems that today. Seems as at home as out back with the dog, you know what I mean. Just seems very comfortable with these guys, and I know what an exciting thing it must be. Think of that photo coming out of that little $8 camera there that was probably bought downstairs, maybe on the deck where you are, John, that's going to take home a picture of the colored shirts on the deck with the President of the United States, of all things.
Shepard, I could not find my way back to the ship's store if I had to. I visited there once. Couldn't get you there now if I had to. But let me tell you, our producer went to try to buy some film a little while ago, completely cleaned out. And this is a sizable store. It's, pretty close to the size of your average 7-Eleven. And they had absolutely no film left. Now you know why.
Yeah, not surprising. I don't remember exactly how many decks are on a Nimitz class, John. Is it 9?
Full throttles blaring and flying off. Would have been an interesting ride, and Frank Buckley was telling us a little bit about that. It'll be interesting, Frank, to hear from the XO about the flight and what if he has an honest assessment of President Bush's stick and rudder capabilities.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing from the XO about what it was like. I suspect he'll say, look, it was just another flight with an honoree aboard, a very important honoree, my commander-in-chief. And one thing that I wanted to mention as we look at the pictures of the president shaking the hands of these young people, you'll notice that a lot of their float coats, the different colored jerseys that they're wearing and the exterior vest that they're wearing, they're dirty. They look like they've been working, and the instruction that they got out on the ship was, don't go off and scrub everything down. Don't give it a battle paint, that is to paint over the top of everything. You know, of course, have the ship the way you'd want it to be presented to your president, but they didn't want these guys going off and getting all cleaned up. They wanted this to remain a working warship, and the uniform of the day is just the working uniform. They were not told to wear their dress whites, any sort of a formal occasion sort of uniform. They are wearing the working uniform of the day. One little point that I wanted to make that I can observe, and I don't think that you can as you see the president, also mingling among the crowd, Condoleezza Rice and Ari Fleischer, also shaking hands and smiling and talking to some people who probably have not had an opportunity to meet them, and they are simply wandering around on the deck and working the crowd as well. Really quite a sight, something that I know that I've never seen, and we certainly have never seen a sitting president take a trap and get recovered on an aircraft carrier.
Well, now you mentioned Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor. Were they in the plane that preceded the president's? Is that, or had they been there?
No, there were two CODs, two C-2 Greyhounds that landed ahead of the Vikings, and it's my belief that they're on one of those aircraft, because we hadn't seen them on the ship earlier, and then they appeared on the deck. So I believe they came on just before the president did.
Now this is the that S-3B that flew in prior to the president carrying Andy Card, the White House Chief of Staff. We're looking at a replay there, and these pictures are something, really. It's quite a scene. This has got to be, you know, we say it was an emotional high for the crew. You know, it's got to be a lot of fun for the president as well. Kira Phillips, what are you seeing?
Right now I'm seeing the president up close and personal down from the flight deck, and he's continuing to mingle, of course, with all the various squadrons. You've got 3 F-18 squadrons down there on the deck, Miles, with all the colored shirts involved in the squadrons, taking pictures with the president. You've got VFA 113, the fighter attack squadron, the Stingers. You've also got VFA 115, the fighter attack squadron, the Eagles, and that's the Super Hornet squadron, the F-18E squadron, and then also VFA 25 fighter attack squadron, Fist of the Fleet, and then all the different colored shirts, of course, we've been talking about. Now you're seeing the wide shot, all of them on the deck.
Hey,
yellow
Kira?
shirts. Yes.
The president has gotten within microphone shot, if you will. Let's see if we can overhear some of these conversations for just a moment.
All right, let's listen in.
Well, actually, it isn't as clear as we would hope it to be. Of course, he's not saying anything right at the moment here.
Well, Miles, if I can add
go
to
ahead,
that,
Frank.
You know, can't really overstate how big a deal this is for some of these young folks in particular. You know, this is in the Navy. You've seen it in the movies when the admiral comes into a room, the captain comes into the room. You hear attention on deck, and people stand at attention. That kind of stuff really happens in the military. And, you know, this is their ultimate leader, their commander-in-chief. So the lack of conversation may be the idea that, look, what do you say to the president? What do you say to the commander-in-chief?
That's a good point.
So
what do you say?
there's just a lot of smiles and handshakes.
The only thing they might...
If I could just...
Yeah, go ahead.
Miles, if I could interject. You saw him taking the picture with all the green shirts, and
Yeah.
the green shirts, they're the ones that hook the planes to the catapults and handle the arresting wire. So just imagine what they were thinking as the president's aircraft was coming in, and they were making sure those wires were ready to go.
Yeah, you want to make sure everything is ship-shape, as they say, and like I said, it's not the most comfortable suit in the world to be standing in, the flight suit, the way it's all rigged up with the parachute and so forth. President making his way
survival.
in. Yeah. Well, I mean, the president actually had to go through a lot of effort to arrive this way. Obviously, really wanted to do this, Kira.
That's true, and you'll see him right now. Obviously, the G suit. My guess is his harness is a little tight down there by his legs. You'll see one of the F-18 pilots helping him loosen it up. They're taking off the water survival vest right now, and in that water survival vest, of course, you've got the inflatable that you're able to pull so you can float in the water. You've got your whistle. You've got your color card. You've got all the various survival necessities, the radio. And when he went through his water survival training to come out and do this, he had to learn what was in every single pocket. So if indeed he had to get out of that aircraft, he knew where everything was to survive and be able to tread water before a rescue helicopter came to him. Obviously, we didn't have to get that far. We didn't see that. That's great news. He landed without any issues, but it's all about being prepared, and he was indeed. He spent time going through that water survival class and doing the chamber, the oxygen chamber, and the dunker, and learning how to basically combat any type of situation that could occur if indeed he had to escape from that aircraft and be able to survive in the water until a rescue helicopter came. A lot of intense training goes into flying in an aircraft when you're flying above water. The Navy is extremely strict about that, no matter who you are, including the President of the United States. If you're flying over water in a Navy aircraft, you've got to complete water survival and have a full physical and make sure the heart is good, the head is good, and if indeed anything were to go wrong, you would know how to survive and how to get out of that aircraft. And obviously the President of the United States made it through that water survival, I'm told, had a really good time, and now he's on the deck greeting all the fighter pilots and squadron members that carried out Operation Iraqi Freedom, Miles.
All right. Tell you what, let's. You mentioned the training. Let's bring Chris Burns in, who's at the point where the president embarked on his journey. Chris, like I said before, I can only imagine this whole trip, when the Secret Service got a hold of it, must have given them fits 40 different ways. But the fact that he went through all that training in and of itself is kind of dangerous, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, Miles. That training involving, of course, preparing for what could be, if the plane did have to ditch the plane, the president would have to be prepared for that. So a lot of difficult practice for that in in tanks, getting very wet, the president getting very wet, and a lot of Secret Service agents watching and making sure that everything remains safe. Of course, the president did want to fly on an F-18, and the Secret Service nixed that because they said it's only a two-seater. It would only be the president and the pilot. There wouldn't be his Secret Service agent that was on that plane, on that S-3B. So a number of things where obviously the Secret Service wanted to be very, very careful about as the president did this. But it was very important to the president. This is a first for a president to fly and to land as a carrier landing, this sort of so-called controlled crash landing, which is what they call an arrested landing on an aircraft carrier. That is a first, and of course also the first tonight being of a president delivering an address on an aircraft carrier that is steaming on the high seas. So the president found that very important, even though it probably gave a lot of headaches to a lot of Secret Service agents, Miles.
Yeah, I've been trying to find the service there. I think as you look at this shot looking down, the gentleman kind of mid-lower left there appears to be, he has the owl-like pan of a Secret Service agent, but clearly I think once he was safe and sound on the deck, I'm sure they all breathed a sigh of relief. He certainly is in a safe place right now, isn't he, Chris?
Well, he certainly is, and the president, of course, will be on that carrier, spending the night after he visits with the servicemen and women on that aircraft carrier. 5,000 of them there. The president also will be having lunch with them, and then we'll have a little bit of downtime before he gives that speech at 9 o'clock Eastern time. He will spend the night on the aircraft carrier and then take a helicopter back to San Diego, because at that point the carrier will be close enough. Right now it's more than 100 miles offshore. That is another reason why they had to take an airplane as opposed to a helicopter. The president will take a copter back to San Diego, then fly on to Santa Clara. Well, he'll make another somewhat military-related appearance. He will be going to a factory that builds the Bradley and Hercules fighting vehicles. Once again, the president making an appearance to promote his economic program, his tax cut, while at the same time trying to show that he does remain very, very popular as a wartime president, Miles.
Well, and of course the lessons of his father, I'm sure, are, well, they're probably not in his mind right this minute, but they are on his mind with that tremendous popularity post-war, translating that into support for domestic programs and thus enduring support that fades once the war has faded from some people's memory. That's obviously very important for the White House right now.
A lot of money on other nations, but George W. Bush is a pretty stubborn guy. He's also patient in the sense that if he thinks he's on the right track, he's going to stick with an issue. He is going to let the political debate take place, and then when the dust settles, then he's going to use his muscle to try to get what he wants. We've seen this over and over. We saw it most recently in the 2002 midterm elections, where much to the surprise of everybody, including many in his own administration, Republicans regained control of the United States Senate. So you're absolutely right, Shep. This is a very ambitious and costly plan. You take the Marshall Plan after World War II and you multiply it by 10, 20, 30, I don't know what. But this is an extraordinarily ambitious effort on the part of the president, and it's the one that makes him, I think, the most transformational president certainly you and I have seen in our lifetimes.
No doubt. And Tony, I'm getting email from all the carriers in the world, it seems like. I just got one from the Chief Warrant Officer, John Fideli, on board the USS Harry Truman, CVN 75, which is in the Mediterranean Sea right now, and they think it's great the president is on board the Lincoln, quoting here, "It's great to see those sailors getting thanked for their 10 months of hard work and dedication for the greater good of the world. We're finishing up our 85 consecutive days at sea and are also looking forward to a homecoming soon, and I know your family and a grateful nation is too." Chief Warrant Officer Fideli on board the Truman. Thanks for dropping the line, and glad to hear you guys are well and coming home soon. Tony, this meet and greet is going on a little longer than it was my understanding that they had set aside for such a thing.
Well, that's the folly of trying to schedule something like this. As I said, Chip, this is better than a homecoming. The president is absolutely loving this. This is one of those feel-good moments. You know, everybody in Washington always says, we want to show support for our fighting forces, even if they disagree with the war, disagree with what they're doing. Here's a president who sent them into harm's way, knowing full well what the possible cost would be. He understands the hardship, and he loves being out there among the men and women who have these very tough, difficult jobs. Nobody has it quite like the Navy, where they end up regularly vanishing for a period of months. That is from the standpoints of their families and friends. It's very hard duty, and it's one of the things that symbolically, I think, really works in this case. These are people who are starved for a touch of home. What better touch than to have your president walking up and slapping your hand and saying, "Hi, how you doing?"
No doubt. Listen to the announcement, Tony. Temperature 57 degrees. Is that what he said? Maybe 67. Let's listen. Long and short of it, I think he's saying get back to work.
I think you got it absolutely right, Chip.
Tony Snow with us in Washington. Tony, will be will be hosting the president's coverage tonight on Fox News Channel, 9 o'clock Eastern Time and 6 o'clock Pacific Time. We'll come on a couple of minutes early to a little bit of analysis, and then Tony will be here afterward for analysis with our all-star panel. And I'll be with you tonight if you choose to watch on the Fox Broadcast Network on your local Fox station. All the Fox properties on board with the president tonight. And I guess, John, the work continues there on board. You're one deck below, I suppose, and it looks like people still have a little bit of time to watch the telly.
That's for sure. A lot of people still gathered around here, Shepard. They only open up the flight deck to the people who are actually supposed to be working up there during flight operations. So, you know, these folks who normally aren't part of that work, they are down here and watching us. And, well, as you can see, waving, hi, Mom, it's been a long time. It occurred to me, Shepard, you know, the president has now had a meet and greet with the first 200 crew members of this ship. He only has about 5,300 left to go.
What now? Yeah, and I'm sure you'll have a busy afternoon of that sort of thing. A live picture up on the flight deck now. And John, are they going to resume flight ops now, or are they quiet for a while?
Not clear to me, Shepard. I think they are going to resume flight ops, but only after the president leaves. It is a dangerous business, after all, and nobody's going to want to take any chances with anything while the president is on board. We've got a boatload of FA-18 Hornets and Super Hornets. All of those pilots want to get home, and I presume they're going to be doing so perhaps later on tomorrow after the presidential departure.
Well, just for viewers who may just be joining us, it's just about 10 minutes to 4 here on the East Coast, 10 to 1 on the West Coast. And if you missed the presidential landing a short time ago, Tony Snow, it was certainly something to see.
Oh, it was terrific. And this was after they'd circled once around. And there you see it. You know, everybody watches with a sense of apprehension, and here's the moment. Shep, how would you like to be the pilot of that jet?
Man, nervous as a cat with, man alive. Or I would have been.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is going to be the scariest landing of your life, and it has nothing to do with the technical difficulties and everything to do with the man who's on there. There you see Navy 1, as you pointed out earlier, and then on the side it says George W. Bush, Commander-in-Chief. This has got to be a huge look. It was thrilling for us just watching it. Can you imagine what a thrill it is for the people there aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln? They've just got to be on cloud nine.
Got to be. I'm reading from a couple of viewers who with some military background, a couple with Navy background, saying, well, if he was getting graded on that landing, it wouldn't have been an A+. But it seems to me if you touch down and know there's no harm, no foul, that's just fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think he probably went a cable too far, but once again, as long as he got a cable and they didn't have to power up and take another pass, that's got to be every pilot's worst nightmare in that situation. And fortunately, didn't happen. The president landed safe and sound.
I said a short time ago, Tony, that there are no elevators on board this 8-9 deck carrier here, and by that I meant sailors don't get on an elevator and go up and down in the thing. They're in the stairs. But Thomas G. King in Valrico, Florida, who is a SFC, U.S. Army retired, insists that we've made a very unfair and unbalanced comment because, of course, there are elevators for the jets to go up and down, and there's even an elevator on the deck where John Scott is now standing, or that's my recollection of that first deck. At any rate, there's some elevators on there. The point I was trying to make, U.S. Army retired, is that in fact you won't be riding up and down in elevators in the lap of luxury going from the Lido deck to the promenade. It's just not how things work on board a Nimitz-class carrier. I don't know, Tony.
I guess he told you, Shep.
Yes, he did, and I am very small after all that. Don't forget, Captain Nash is with us again. Captain, you always rode the elevators, though, right?
Yeah, not hardly. What they've got, Shep, is they have aircraft elevators to bring the airplanes from the flight deck, which we're looking at now, down to the hangar bay, which is where John Scott is, and vice versa. We do a lot of the maintenance down there. The other thing is they have weapons elevators, which take the bombs and the missiles from the weapons magazines, which are deep in the ship, and bring them up to the flight deck so they can be loaded on the aircraft. But what you're looking at is a ship that is as long as the Empire Empire State Building is high.
Wow.
And it is as deep from the keel up to the top of the island. It's about a 15, 20-story building. So you're looking at a lot of emphasis there on size. But the one thing that strikes me is something that you and Tony were discussing, and that is the ease with which the president and the sailors had. It was obvious that there was a true bond of affection there, and for the president to come out and not just in any old fashion, but to come aboard in the right seat of an ejection seat aircraft, trap aboard, come out and spend that much time with these guys and gals is absolutely probably going to be the highlight a lot of their lives. We emphasized all during the war speed, precision, and a lot of the technology. That is not what won the war. What won the war were those young people who are sacrificing a portion of their young lives to serve this country. They won the war.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've said no doubt too many times today, but it's all a little bit overwhelming. We were discussing what it's like down there on the flight deck, and one of our producers, Steve Nifton, reminds me that Lloyd's of London called the flight deck of an aircraft carrier the most dangerous workplace on Earth, and it certainly is, and it speaks volumes about how well this particular carrier, and all the rest for that matter, did during this conflict. They're running flight ops off that thing 24 hours a day. They never lost a plane, never lost a person during all of those flight ops over this 10-month period that they've been deployed, of course. And that camera on the right there, Captain Nash, that particular camera on the right there is the one that you look at from the control room upstairs, if I remember right.
That is called the PLAT, which is the Precision Landing Aid Television. And what you've got is a way, remember, every landing on an aircraft carrier is graded. And people aren't bashful about grading your approaches. So what you just saw were the crosshairs, which show the lineup and glide slope. And actually where that should be is pretty much a crosshair right on the pilot's head, because it takes into account what's called hook-to-eye distance. So that looked like a pretty sweet pass to me. Looked like he went a little bit flat there at the end and maybe picked up a 4-wire. But you know, the good news is, like Tony said, he didn't bolter. He's aboard. Looked like a nice, safe pass, which is exactly what they want for the President of the United States.
But think of the ribbing that guy's going to get on board.
Shep, you don't even want to go there.
Man alive, he hit the 4-wire.
No, if he boltered. If he bolted,
forget about it.
Oh, no. I mean, that's why he was probably all the way last night and all the way out there to the ship. He was saying the Navy pilot's prayer, which is, Lord, please don't let me screw this up.
Only a few million people around the globe watching, after all.
There you go. No, he did a great job. That was awesome.
Tony Snow watching in Washington, too. And I was watching, flipping around this morning, and one of the reporters from one of the networks, I don't remember which one, but said that he actually had, what do you call it again, a bolt?
Bolter.
A bolter.
Yeah,
bolter.
Ended up in the middle of a bolter situation, which I'm guessing for a civvy would be a little bit, I don't know, disturbing.
Well, it certainly is, because what happens at that point is, Captain Nash will tell you, they have to power up and try again. It's one of the reasons why you always hear those engines racing after they've already hit the tail hook has made contact with the cable, because you just can't be too careful on these. And I don't know. I have a feeling. The other thing you got to keep in mind, Shep, is you well know, again, an aircraft carrier is not just sitting there flat. It appears to be just sort of making its way placidly across the sea. But it's moving up and down 10, 20, 30, 40 feet. I mean, this is a moving target at all times. And Chuck Nash, you can tell us how difficult that is. You've got a moving target. You do not have a flat runway. It's tilting, it's canting one way or another. I mean, the difficulties on doing this are very hard to understate.
Well, and what happens, Tony, you're right. There are a lot of dynamics going on, because the winds could be gusting, which makes the nose of the aircraft pitch a little bit, and it makes you make more power settings. The ship could be moving, and not only does the ship go bow down, bow up, which raises the fantail or the back of the ship up and down, but what actually is happening is you're landing on an angle deck. So what you can actually get is a little technique, or a little thing called Dutch roll, where the back of the ship actually wallows. So now you've got what's called a pitching deck, with some Dutch roll. Now you just take away the sunshine. Let's pretend it's at night. It's about 200 overcast and about a half a mile in driving rain. Welcome aboard.